when I was in school in the early 90s, there was so much discussion at the time about fine art photography versus journalism. And sitting in this room, I know we consider you a journalist and your images were meant for that, but sitting in this room surrounded by this magnificent work, your work is fine art photography. I mean, there is something about the work that is beyond just recording what you see. Like you said, you tell a story through it. So can you talk about that for a little bit?
Well, you know, the first time I did an exhibition was in Paris at the Palais d'Iéna, and it was a huge undertaking. They had, let me see, 260 prints, I think,
Wow.
different sizes. And sometime I would go to the gallery after the opening, excuse me, and I saw people coming out of the exhibition crying and tears in their eyes. I said, my God, what's going on? So I spoke to a few of them, and they were saying, what I have assembled there was so close to their lives that they were reliving the past. And that was extremely rewarding to me because I thought the pictures were meant for pages in a magazine, you know, a full page, a double page, a cover. And all of a sudden, in 2014, it became something else. And actually, much of the political and the way we live have not changed very much. I did a story for life. It became a cover and an essay inside on the struggle to be an individual. And it dealt with life in the United States at that time, which was, I think, 1969, maybe. And it dealt with the loss of identity, the divorce rate, and all the problems, including the Vietnam War, of course, at that time. At that time, it was, no, it is now as pertinent as at the time. And maybe that's the rewarding part of doing shows, because it has opened up a new door, which I didn't know existed. So since then, we've done quite a few exhibitions in LA, more in Paris, and some will be at the Museum of Modern Art in France soon, hopefully. It was postponed because of the virus. So
yeah, what struck me too, like when we were laying these out, is how relevant the social activism pictures are today. You know, the civil rights pictures, the NARAL pro-choice marches. It's kind of mind-boggling that on the one hand, I'm hanging that from 1972, I think it was. And then we have a march happening in Highland Park on this Saturday, a women's march. And I've got friends who are working on that. So it's like the two worlds are colliding. It looks like nothing's changed in a way. And that's, you know, I'm sure you didn't think about that at the time.
Well, no.
You know, right?
Most of the assignment came one after the other, and I didn't realize that I was documenting the last half of our century. I discovered that at the first show in 2014, as I said before. So I think it's terrific. I'm glad to bring my pictures to life again. Not only
was it
not
Was
only,
it hard to like be doing stories about like the Vietnam War after having survived and lived through the effects of war as a child? That must have been really hard.
well, unfortunately, I witnessed many wars after World War II. Uh, you're right. I mean, World War II was very painful because you were persecuted just because of the religion you were in, and the French police cooperated with the French government, and it was all very sad to watch, and you would risk your life just going out in the street. And we were lucky to escape on July, let me see, in July 1942, 1942. The police knocked at our doors, and naturally we did not answer. We saw them through the window in the courtyard. But at some point, I was hungry, and my mother crawled to the kitchen to make me an egg. And they heard some of the noise, I guess. And then they tried to bring the door down. So to show you the cruelty of all this stuff, a neighbor even offered the police an axe so they could open the door
Oh my
a little bit
gosh.
better. But my mother had prudently installed a second lock, and this was a metal door. So they banged on the door for a
Oh,
couple of hours. Then when lunch came, they quit because as good French,
right.
they had to break for lunch. So while they broke for lunch, we escaped with nothing in our hands, nothing in our pockets. And that was the beginning of
How
hiding.
did you physically get to the south of France? Like, did you get a train? Like, how did you get there? Do you remember even?
Well, I didn't get to the south of France. It was about in Limay. It's a small,
Oh, right.
maybe, let me see, I mean, it's about 70 miles from Paris, which
Okay.
at that time seems to be another continent. We came by train, I believe,
Mm.
which is in itself dangerous because it was my mother and I. My father had already been arrested after receiving a letter which became known as a billet vert, which means a green card. And he went to City Hall in our neighborhood, and they kept him.
Mm.
So, and the story goes on. I don't want to bore you all with all.
No, it's not boring. I mean, I watched the documentary. I've watched it twice and I cried. I mean, it's really just,
Yeah,
it's an amazing story of survival and perseverance. And just even immigrating at 17, you know, we think about our kids at 17, they're still babies. You know, that's,
oh,
you
it
know,
was
they're
not
still
that
living at
easy.
home. They're not even in college. Like now it's a big deal. You go to college and you came here by yourself, you know, it's
Yes. But
a
when
big
all this
deal.
happened during World War II, that was 1942. So I was, let's see, 33, 42. I was 10 years old.
Uh,
No, not 9 years old, nine. So my mother and I were separated because we couldn't be seen together. And she went to the next town. She worked there as a seamstress.
mm,
So that's how she was able to hide there without paying the people. She did things for them. And I was
mm,
with a couple in that small town in Limay, which we're trying to induct now in the Just of the Just uh,
Mm.
at the Jerusalem Yad Vashem Museum. So
Oh,
we,
that's amazing.
I'd like to jump in and ask you a question. Your first of all, the documentary Looking Up has become very popular, and Nicole, what a labor of love. You know, a lot of people write off their grandparents as a generation, a forgotten generation, something that grandparents or whatever. But you made something so special about your grandfather, and it's picking up popularity. Why is it, do you think, in this time and everything that we're going through, that it's resonating with people? Nicole, I'll ask you first, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very topical conversation everyone's kind of rehaving now. There's like a rise in anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
I feel like, in schools, yes, they talk about World War II and the Holocaust, but Peter's brother is an English teacher in Sacramento, California. And he was even saying how, for his curriculum as an English teacher in high school, he requires the kids to read Night by Elie Wiesel, but that is not a requirement across the country. And so a lot of these kids don't have the kind of perspective on what it was really like living through World War II and really what the Holocaust ended up becoming. People don't know what Auschwitz is. There's like a large, they took a poll, I forget the exact statistic, but it was definitely in the high 80s, early 90s of people that like millennials and Generation Z that didn't even know what Auschwitz was. Right. Which is like an insane number to think about. And so for me, I felt like I had never heard my grandfather's story from front to back until I went to Israel, and I just stumbled across his Shoah testimony at Yad Vashem. And it was then in Israel hearing his story for the first time, and it resonated with me after seeing his parish show that he described in 2014. I said, what a remarkable story. I mean, to have someone that has suffered through tremendous tragedy and be able to like pick himself up by his bootstraps, like I feel so honored to share a gene pool with him. And it really does put like perspective on life, and like how the second lock that my great grandmother put on the metal door easily is the reason why I'm here today. Had she not done that, I don't know what my grandfather's story would have become. So I think it's just important to continue to share these stories. Caren had just mentioned that, at 17, like, how can you imagine like being left with no parents, years prior to that, and immigrating to a whole new country, like being all by yourself. We like to show this documentary to high school students. Yeah. And a lot of them will do like questions to my grandfather. We received letters from these high school students just saying how, wow, them at 13, 14 years old, 15 even, they could not even like begin to imagine what it would have been like to be in his particular situation. And so I think that having that perspective of, wow, you've really been through a lot, is like one of the biggest reasons why I feel like we made the documentary to begin with. Yes, his artwork is beautiful, the photography is amazing, but I think it's also a deeper undertone to his story as well about, family and survival and what it takes to do that. So
I think you captured all of that in the video. It's very life affirming. It's his story, but I think it's something we all need to hear right now. Mm-hmm. And that you made a hero of your grandfather.
I didn't need to make him a hero. He was a hero already.
But there is something.
You told his story. You told his story very well. And Henri, I'm just asking for you at this point. We have had a very difficult time lately. The last 4 years have been unprecedented in the United States. You've been in the United States for many years, and you've witnessed the change of culture of life. And what would you say to your wisdom right now of us looking at the world around us and how we might interpret it? And it's very positive watching your video. You leave it with a very the documentary, you leave it with a very positive life view. Is there anything that you would, with your wisdom at this point, share that we could move on?
I must tell you that when I was proceeding with my career at full blast, working for many magazines, I spent a lot of time working for Life and traveling and a lot. And I never thought it was necessary to talk to the children about what had happened. I did not want to burden them with this heavy weight on their shoulders. And when the time came that Nicole asked me to make a movie, at first I was very reluctant to say yes. And then I thought about it some more. And because of all the events that were taking place in the United States and around the world, with anti-Semitism rising again, I said, maybe I should tell the story. It's going to be one of a million or 2 million or whatever stories, but it will add up as an eyewitness to our time as to the cruelty of war, particularly for the children. And you're right, I did witness the same thing in Vietnam. Wherever there is a war to cover, it's always the same issue. And you just saw what happened in Afghanistan just last month. I mean,
yes.
How different is it from Vietnam?
Mm.
So I'm glad I did it, so we can reach young people. Hopefully young people will watch it, or I've already watched it, and touched by it. And hopefully they will guide the thought that we project in at the time that they vote. So they're careful not to vote for any demagogue. Because let me say this, Hitler did not come to power in Germany by force. He came to power duly elected by all the gentle people of Germany.
Yeah.
And everybody knew that he was a demagogue. He had already written Mein Kampf in 1933. By the way, 1933 is the year I was born.
Wow.
It was not the greatest year to be born. But anyway, it is what it is. And in all of this, I want people to realize how easy for a demagogue to take power if we lack the strength and take the time to analyze what some of those politicians stands for and the possibility of disaster.
Mm.
And believe me, World War II was a tremendous disaster. Anybody who survived, it always had a hard time discussing it. And I did not discuss it until the time we made the movie, even with my children. So,
Wow.
And it was difficult to go back into my memory and revisit these terrible times, which I didn't want to rehash once again. But as I said, considering the situation around the world with rising anti-Semitism, I'm glad I did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And Nicole, once again, good for you to
Yeah.
be able to pull this together and create
Twist
something
arm
like
a little bit.
Well, you and Peter, Joey has been singing your praises as well, Peter. You did a phenomenal job as a filmmaker. I mean, it's beautifully shot and it's really something.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I told him everything he knows.
Yeah, that's true.
Whether I wanted to learn it or
I
not.
love that relationship
but
though. It's so
whether,
great.
whether or not he wanted to listen to me.
Exactly.
it's a wonderful piece to watch. It's
is.
Thank
it's
you.
life affirming. It's interesting. It's there's a great deal of humor in it. I think it. You know, my son is a young documentarist, and I'm going to share it with him. But
Fantastic.
again, that you went. You know, my grandfather. I'm gonna spotlight him. I'm gonna make a big deal of him, and it really worked. So I had one question that I've been thinking about for a while. Henri, when you're together, you've captured all these great moments of America, and of you know, one of the great pictures is, you know, with the Dr. King picture, and there's two hands.
It's not Dr. King. It's just at a protest. It's a civil rights
protest, and there's
Yes.
two hands, and one hand is black and one hand is white, and you seem to capture those things. I wonder, do you keep a camera at family events, or are you at family events, or are you capturing them?
I used to,
Yeah.
not anymore. But I used to do, yes, a lot of shooting of the family and the
And
children.
where are those images? That'd be an amazing exhibition too.
Do you have those images, Nicole, of like you know, family life taken by your dad, by your grandfather, or
They're kind of mixed in. I think my mom has a lot from like her childhood. There's these like beautiful pictures of like her in the meadows in like Woodstock, New York, like looking at a flower and the sunlight's hitting perfectly. And it's not even a family event. It was just probably like a impromptu photo. They're kind of scattered in his collection, I'd say. Even like, you know, he'll use the same cameras and it'll be scrolling through and he'll be like, oh, there's Philippe, or oh, there's Brigitte, you know.
But there was actually one of the first times I ever met him. We were out at dinner in Paris right after, like, around the time of his show, and I had met him, like, I don't know, 2 days before or something, and we were all at dinner, and somebody had their iPhone out and they were taking pictures of everyone, and Henri said, "Here, let me take a few pictures," and I remember this so vividly. Because I was sitting across from him, and he took the phone from the person and he held it up, and, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he like handed it back, and the person was like, "Oh my God, these are incredible!" And then we all looked at the pictures, and just him like sitting there, he was just in the middle of dinner. He just kind of looked up and said, "Hold on, let me take a few pictures quickly," and just grabbed these 4 insane frames that like nobody else could have taken.
Yeah.
And then he just took the pictures and he just went back to eating.
Yeah.
And it was just so simple, and it was mind blowing. And then that was like one of the big first steps for me. I was just seeing that moment, being like, oh my God, like you just took that person's camera and like just made that like it was nothing. And it really was nothing. He probably doesn't even remember it. He has no memory of this at all, I'm sure.
Oh, no.
Because he probably remembers the meal more than he remembers.
Well, Henri, what is it that you see that we don't see? What is it that you capture something? You know, you're looking through a lens, and we're looking with both eyes. And how do you see what we don't see? And that's probably the biggest question that anybody could ask right now. How do you see? And you talked about there. I was looking back at the video. Sometimes you are a fly on the wall, and sometimes you are working with them. How do you see what we don't?
Nothing different. It's just that I react to the people I meet, and you get, you know, my perception of who these people are, and try to show their real self. You know, I did many photographs of big movie stars.
Yeah.
And I was lucky, like some of the Elvis Presley photograph. I did that job for his record company, RCA Victor. So I had an in to go with him from the military base in New Jersey up to his home, Graceland, in what's the name of the town?
Memphis.
Memphis, yeah.
Memphis.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the curtain came down because all of a sudden, all the artists were seeking management, publicity people, and they would not do any stories unless they were guaranteeing a cover on a certain magazine. Or so you had to agree to their terms, which I think it's beyond journalism. You just can't do that, and that's what's happening today. So I was still operating at a time where I had pretty much free access to those big name people, and tried in the short time that I met them to get to know who they are, and maybe the empathy that I felt for some of these people. Some I liked, which some of them I liked as they were my heroes as a child when I was going to see American movies in Paris. And many of the people I saw in the movies, I always dreamt of meeting them. And I met many of them. So it's a dream realized. And it was a privilege because I did not need to go to college to learn about life. All these people taught me a lot more than I would ever get in any university, or it was the university of life, and it was just incredible. And
Well, I think that you must have a way too to connect to people that lets them put down their guard, because you can see that in the images that there's a connection between you and the person you're photographing. You're not objectifying them. You both have a dialogue that's very clear. You know, it just, you can feel that.
I'll tell you a story. When we did the show in Paris in 2014, François Cheval, who was the curator of that show, told me when he looked at Jean-Luc Godard, the French film director, he said, there are thousands of pictures of him. There's not one that looks like this, and he's happy, he's smiling. How do you do it? And, you know, you touched upon the question that is the most important in realizing this. I try to know the person I'm taking pictures of, and in turn, the viewer will realize who these people are in some minor way. You know, we never get to know them completely, but I made an effort to do so.
Yeah.
It's amazing for us to look at the people that you've spent time with.
Yeah.
In your life. For me personally, there's this great image of Charlie Chaplin, and it's more of an architectural piece because it's a little further away. Yeah. And you know, you've met people that we only think of as legends, and you spent time with them, like you said, the Elvis Presley and the Kennedys and Godard and you know, Brigitte Bardot and all those people,
you know, my heroes were the Marx Brothers.
Oh, same for me. You know, I love them.
I met two brothers, Arpo and Groucho. And they live up right to what we've seen in the movie. You know, they were my heroes when I was a kid. And I cannot tell you what satisfaction it was to talk to them. And
I can only imagine.
I told Harpo, my God, you talk. Did he talk? He had written a book at the time called Harpo Speaks. And he was real funny. I mean, you know, incredible. In the movies, you didn't hear him talk. And Groucho was as funny and witty in person as I had seen in the movie.
Yeah.
So, you know, what more can you say? You know, it's a learning, it's an incredible learning experience.
So we're basking in the glow of what you've done.
Literally.
Yeah,
Literally.
absolutely.
And
And that's enough.
you only have a piece of the show. Although with 50 or so prints, you do it very well from what I've seen.
Absolutely.
Believe me, if we could have had 2 crates, and we would have filled our whole art center and been thrilled.
Listen, we could have filled 2 art center with the show in Paris. It was 260 prints. That's a lot.
But that's barely scratching the surface. I mean, the man has we estimate 1 million negatives in his collection.
Oh my
God.
God.
And unarchived. So, you know,
well, that's the other thing now, like just the film of it, like the technique, the film, no matter, like we're looking back, you know, at the time they called it journalism. It might not be art, it's this. But now that we don't even have film anymore, we don't have dark rooms anymore, there are fewer and fewer, and we're so addicted to our cell phones and the instantaneous and thousands of pictures. And when you see these, you go, oh, this is a whole different thing. I mean, they're beautifully, you know, printed and shot, and just the technique of every detail of it.
Thank you.
It just reminds you of the power of photography, you know.
Yeah, right. You're right. How many pictures do you remember that were taken with an iPhone?
Right.
You know, that's the thing. We try to write history, and obviously now we can see it for maybe 100 years.
I have an accidental picture of my oldest, who's now 24. And she was about 4 years old, and we were at a wedding. And I was in a tux, and she was dressed up, and she was the flower girl. She fell asleep on my shoulder, and somebody took the picture, and it just captured this feeling. And it was a one-off. It was a one of a kind. And you've done that again and again and again and again. And that's what makes the difference. This is a picture that I'll remember the rest of my life. She keeps it always with her. But you are, you can capture that moment like that. So what's next for you, Henri? And you know, in your career, in your life, in your anything, what's your next?
Well, between doctors, ophthalmologists, and I try to squeeze in and try to begin to organize my archive, and it's not an easy task. So I am actually looking for depositing my collection with some institution, which would be financed by, there are enough zillionaires in our society, and to conserve the photograph, it's going to require 3 or 4 years to scan everything and catalog it and all that. It's beyond the time I've got to do this. So either we're going to create a foundation to organize this if we can get financing, or give it to an institution which would be financed by somebody who could that would permit us, or the institution, to do the work that needs to be done. So in 50 years, we can, when I'm not here, some new use of the photograph can take place, either in a book, who knows what medium we will have at the time. But to go back for a moment about what you said, James, about film, some of the best movies by the top directors, like Steven Spielberg, are still shot on film and not they're not shooting in digital because the detail contained in film is unique. Even though digital has become incredibly good, it still does not touch the quality of film. And besides that, in photography, the films can be scanned, they can easily be cataloged. And how many great pictures have been thrown out just because somebody didn't have room in their hard drive or didn't think of it, and they lose the picture forever. And sometimes you want to go back to the archive to see what you missed 30 years ago. And you find a picture you never thought it was very important. But as time moves forward, you're looking for different values. And sometimes you discover things in the archive that you had let go at the time. So film is still important. They still make film. It's getting more and more difficult and more expensive to print, for example. Even to print from the negative, the price of that has multiplied. So not everybody can do this. This is, you need good financing in order to make a silver gelatin print. And we are, thanks to the progress of the digital, we are now able to make prints that are pretty close to silver gelatin. I was amazed. In Paris, the show was pigment, and they really looked good. They were almost equal to dye transfer or black and white silver gel prints. So yeah, even though everybody thinks film is over, not quite yet.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
We've taken up so much of your time, and I just want to thank you. I really wanted an excuse to spend time with you because I watched the film. I love what's going on. We're so grateful that you included us, Nicole. You know, and it's just wonderful what you've done to really capture a life of images and what it's meant for the entire world. And we're honored. I'm honored to be in this conversation with you, and I hope we have something in the future to talk about more. But
and I hope
to see you in person, right?
Exactly, to see you all in person.
Yeah.
By the way, as a last parting thought, the next big project might be a scripted film with real actors.
Oh.
You know, I am not Cary Grant, even though Peter calls me Cary Grant. And
can Joey play you?
Perfect.
Yeah, that's
Can Joey play the young photographer in New York?
He's already talked to Joey about it.
Oh, okay, good. I'm not like his mom's plugging him or anything.
No, I know.
But...
Trust me, it's.
So I hope maybe something comes of this, and it'd be fantastic to witness such a film while I'm still on this planet.
Oh, that would be amazing. And
that would be amazing.
Let's hope we have many years. Let's hope we have many years to develop this idea.
Yes. Like this exhibit and the theme in the movie, just ending it on such a positive note. You all do look up. You're so bright, and I'm so happy to have gotten to meet you after hearing so much about you. And Nicole, working with you through this whole process has been just a true joy and pleasure. So thank you so much.